Our game is 7:30 p.m. as always on NBC. Our pregame coverage starts at 7 o'clock. Syracuse goes to West Lafayette, takes on Purdue. It is the same exact situation as when these two teams faced off last year. Syracuse is 2-0, Purdue is 1-1. That one was at the JMA Wireless Dome, and it ended up being, and I just rewatched it, one of the most exciting games in all of college football last year. It looked like one of the most boring games through the first couple of quarters. It was a rock fight essentially through three quarters. And then the fourth quarter, it wasn't just that there was a lot of scoring. It was that there were maybe more penalties than I've ever seen in a game down the stretch in the fourth quarter of that one. And Dino Babers, the head coach at Syracuse, yesterday in his weekly press conference, someone said, "Hey, what do you remember about that game last year? And what do you take away?" He goes, "I remember a lot of penalties." Because that's what it was. It was flag after flag after flag that allowed Syracuse to eventually win the game. It was a touchdown with 7 seconds left from Garrett Shrader to Arondé Gadsden. And the bummer for us is that Arondé Gadsden, who was the number one receiver for Syracuse, is all than likely not going to play this week after injuring what appeared to be his ankle last week in the victory over Western Michigan. A victory that was another lopsided win for Syracuse, 113-7 is what they've outscored their first two opponents, Colgate and Western Michigan. But first Power 5 opponent for them. For Purdue, they come off a massive win against Virginia Tech, as we had chronicled. And similarly to last year, it feels like they're starting to put it together after starting 1-1. Now, a different circumstance, because you mentioned that first loss last year was to Penn State. First loss this year was to Fresno State. But a lot of storylines in this game for sure. Another one that could be exciting for us to call. What stands out to you as we get set to head over there to Indiana?
Well, I think one thing that stands out to me is two really good quarterbacks. Yes. I mean, Hudson Card's his first year at Purdue, transferred from Texas. We talked about it earlier. I mean, when he filled in for the injured Quinn Ewers last year, he played well at times at Texas. So, he came to Purdue this year with Graham Harrell, the new offensive coordinator, who came from West Virginia. They're expecting big things from that combination, and I think we'll see it. I think he's very talented. And then Garrett Shrader, he's another guy who transferred, not last year, but the year before, from Mississippi State. So he came from a different offensive system. He's kind of a bigger, somewhat of a dual threat guy. I mean, he's not afraid to run the football. He's a tough guy, but he's been throwing the ball really well here the first couple games. So I think it's a good matchup of two quarterbacks. We have two African-American head coaches in the game with Ryan Walters and Dino Babers. So that's always kind of cool when that happens, when you have that opportunity. And then I think for Purdue, just a chance to play a quality opponent and see if they can get a win. So good matchup. I think it's going to be a fun game to call. And again, they announced that it was a sellout a couple of weeks ago. So I think the atmosphere for our primetime game on 7:30 on Saturday night will be a lot of fun.
You mentioned it on NBC 7:30. Hopefully that sellout crowd comes to deliver. I feel pretty confident they will. They know it's a big game. They know what happened at the Dome last year. And watching that game back from last year between these two teams, similar week 3 in Syracuse, the crowd was legit in that one and really did end up making a difference for the Orange. And so hopefully Purdue and their faithful see that and say, okay, let's see if we can get our get back a little bit. But a fascinating matchup that has implications kind of moving forward just in the trajectory of both seasons, because Purdue, despite starting 1-2 last year, we know how they finished the season, found themselves in the Big Ten championship game. So it certainly helps that this is out of conference. It certainly helped that their first game that was a loss was also out of conference. And so it allows them to play 3 really good non-conference opponents to start the season, 2 out of the ACC, but 3 really good tests for themselves before they get started in their Big Ten slate this year.
Yeah, I remember when I was visiting Purdue this spring, I wanted to go out and visit all of the new head coaches in the Big Ten West. And when I went to Purdue, and I remember, all the teams in the locker room, they had their schedules up, like in big letters or helmets or whatever on the wall. And when I looked at their schedule, I'm like, wow, that is not an easy schedule for a first-year coach and for a first-time head coach like Ryan Walters. I mean, because, Fresno State is a good football program, and a good coach in Jeff Tedford. And then you go to Virginia Tech, even though they haven't, like we said, has not been the same as they were several years ago. Blacksburg's a tough place to go win. And then you come back and play Syracuse. So a really difficult way to start your first year as a head coach. before you even get into the Big Ten schedule. So, but they're sitting at 1-1, and I think if you'd have told Ryan Walters, you got a chance to be 1-1 going into this Syracuse game, he'd have been pretty thankful for that right now.
No doubt. So again, 7:30 NBC. We'll have all the coverage starting at 7, and the other game on Peacock, Washington and Michigan State is 5 p.m. Eastern.